Future faking is a hell of a trick. Hocus pocus. I'm going to make you look over there. I'm going to take your dreams and wishes and promise them to you, and you will believe me, and then poof, they will never happen. So let's start with basics. Narcissistic folks definitely tend to lie more than the rest of us. And why do they lie? So they can maintain an image to other people that will continue to get them validation and praise and admiration. None of us are perfect, right? None of us. Not us, not the narcissist, anyone. And sometimes if we do something that makes us not look good and we tell the truth about it, we might look less than perfect, or less perfect. So let's say someone says, "Why were you late?" And the truth is, because I slept in and I laid around in bed and I was fooling around with my phone and I didn't even really want to be here. That's the truth. You going to say it? Probably not, because it's not a good look. So instead, people might lie and say something like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I got stuck in traffic, and part of that's because I got held up because my elderly neighbor needed me to shovel some snow from their front walk." Well, now that sounds a lot better, right? So when we think about lies, and certainly the way narcissistic people lie, they often maintain their own version of reality. And so they will create a narrative through fiction, sort of mixed with fact, to maintain that reality, often of them as being a good person. Now, this pseudo reality that is designed to maintain their grandiosity and ensure that they keep getting validation and protect their ego, all of that becomes their identity, which then ends up blurring any lines between truth and fiction. The delusion and the lies become real, and any threats to that reality are overpowered and dominated by tactics like manipulation and gaslighting. So that takes us to this question that a lot of you have sent in of whether narcissistic people actually believe their lies. You know what? It may actually be the wrong question for us to be asking. Because the only thing that is stronger than their lies, that may even drive their lies, is their need to maintain a sort of certain reality to the world. For this reason, narcissistic folks they get obsessed with getting the right picture, or living in the right house or apartment, or wearing the right outfit, or having the right labels, or driving the right car. Looking good to them is more important than the reality. Because if they look good, that means that the world looks at them and says, "Well, their life must be good because it looks good." Because that's how they view the world. That, well, if that looks good, then it must be good. The lies for a narcissist become a way of maintaining that false reality. And once we dig deeper to a psychological level that the narcissist is definitely not connected to because it's so unconscious, it's their fear, their inadequacy, their insecurity, and the shame that would be activated if all of that messy insecurity and inadequacy were to get revealed. The narcissistic person lives in an unnamed, unidentified fear of sort of being found out. They'll hide backstories and tell revisionist stories about their families of origin, their education, their jobs, their lives, their relationship. It's all more lies. Narcissistic people know damn well what is and what is not viewed well in terms of behavior by society. It's interesting, they know it, they just don't follow it. For example, most narcissistic folks know that if they get caught in, I don't know, unethical behavior or cheating on a spouse or something like that, it's not a good look and that they will be judged badly. So what do? They lie about it. They lie because they want to be able to impulsively do what they want to do, but they don't want to be judged badly for it. This is actually very different from psychopaths who actually, yeah, they'll lie, but they don't care if they get caught. And they often really don't care what other people think of them. They may still lie just to sort of smooth out the rough spots, but they actually really don't care. Narcissists care, and that's what drives their lying. Lies themselves are a complicated space. There are white lies that really carry no harm, and white lies are often designed to protect another person. So white lies would be things like, wow, that dress looks great on you, or I can't wait to go to your sister's wedding. Now, on the other hand, are the betrayal lies. Betrayal lies are on the other end of the spectrum and are the lies that hide information that will harm someone else when that information gets out, like misappropriating money, infidelity, lying about a crime, or some sort of significant ethical breach. Narcissistic folks definitely engage in both types of lies. I don't know that they do the white lies to protect other people, but they definitely will engage in the betrayal lies. It's very interesting to catch a narcissistic person in a lie. If you have enough evidence, for example, video or photos or some other kind of smoking gun, even when you have that evidence, the narcissistic person will often not cop to the truth. They will instead blame you for being paranoid or call it a smear campaign or a witch hunt. They will make it about people being jealous of them. But what they will often not do is simply own it and say, I lied. I lied because I wanted to look good and I didn't want to look like the bad person that this behavior is showing me to be. And they will also never say, I lied because I wanted to look good and I'm just sorry that I lied because that lie hurt you. They don't have the empathy to care and they don't have the insight to connect the dots on what the function of the lie is. They really don't. That's how baked it in it is for them. So the short answer to this question of whether narcissistic people believe their lies, frankly, what they believe is that they should be able to do what they want, whenever they want, never be judged badly for that behavior when they step out of line and hurt people, and not face consequences. That's what they believe. The lies are a way to keep that entitled reality alive. But they understand the rules of society enough. So narcissistic people understand how society works enough. So they know better than to say either of those things out loud. That this idea that they should be able to get away with whatever they want, whenever they want, and not ever have to be accountable. And that the reason that they lie is because they're entitled. It's just not going to do that. It's not something that looks good to other people. And what is it going to do then? It runs the risk of stopping them from getting validation, which is sort of the energy that fuels them. The narcissistic person's lies are just as impulsive as their bad behavior is. They just do it. They lie literally without thinking because all of their investment is in looking good to other people. But because that unconscious process and the need to look good are so key to their identities, they kind of do believe the lies. Why? Because they have to. The narcissistic person's inner world is like a bunch of messy closets that contain lots of secrets, skeletons, and lies, and they don't want anyone to see any of it. The unconscious and the automatic lying, that's such a classical part of narcissism, means that it's less about their belief about their lies and more about the fact that the lying is just a tactic for how they get through the world. For a narcissistic person, gaining dominance and validation takes precedence over everything, including the truth. That means if you are in a relationship with a narcissistic person, the lying, it kind of goes along with the territory, and you have to get your head around the idea that at some level they have to believe their lies. So they do. And you, or me, or anyone, none of us are going to be the ones to school the narcissists on their lies or teach them to stop lying. I know that many people out there have the fantasy that if I could just show the narcissistic person that I am onto their lies, then then we can make a fresh start. Nah, they're just going to be mad that you took off their mask and then rage further and then take their lies deeper underground. The lies are who they are. Each of the lies, you can almost view it as a sort of like a little mosaic tile that makes up the mask that the narcissistic person wears to be able to continue to live and portray that false reality to the world, as well as their identity that allows them to believe that they look good to the world. So let's talk about cheating. It doesn't feel good to be cheated on. It really doesn't. And even some of the most open-minded people in the world obviously get hurt. Jealousy is a universal emotion. It is something our brains are wired to feel. We don't like it when our partner strays. It feels like a betrayal. It impacts us in terms of our ability to trust. We don't like it. Some of you may have cheated. Many more of you have been cheated on. And you will often see it as one of the greatest betrayals you've ever had. In fact, many people will say if they were cheated on, it has changed how they view trust for many, many years going forward. In fact, many people say they're never even able to trust again. One thing we do know, and we talk about this in the 30 Days of Narcissism, is narcissists cheat. It's something many of them do. Not all. And I get into that distinction of why not all of them cheat in that video. But many of them do. Why? Because when you're a narcissist, you get bored of your narcissistic supply. That's why they're sometimes not very good at long-term marriages. After a while, they want someone younger. They just want someone who brings different supply. They want someone who makes them look good in public. They want someone who validates and admires them in a new way. They want someone who sends them flirty texts. They just constantly need narcissistic supply. Cheating is a great way to get that. Doesn't make it any better for you, but that's really what it is. They're thinking like, oh, I already have your narcissistic supply. Not that interesting. You might have already been discarded a little bit too, because you're just, again, after a few years, they do get bored. They may try to control you. They may try to call all the shots, but they're definitely getting bored with you. So they cheat, and that brings in new narcissistic supply because narcissists are so entitled. They feel like they have the right to cheat because they should have anything that they possibly want because they're so grandiose. They think that this is the grand love story of the ages and that they should have it and view themselves as being in some sort of grand epic love story while they have this love affair and use all kinds of rationalizations like, well, this is how they do it in France or some other such thing. One thing that a narcissist does not do when they cheat is really think about how this is affecting their partner. And that is where sort of the devastation lies. When I've worked with clients who have endured infidelity in a marriage or in a long-term relationship, I've often asked them, would you have preferred that they talk to you about this first? And in most cases, people say, yes, though that would have sucked too. I would have simply liked it that they wanted to work on this relationship or that I was enough. Remember, when someone cheats on you, it's not because you're not enough. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the person who's making that choice. So the fact is that many people will say that, yeah, I would have just preferred to not been deceived because it's the deceiving. And what narcissists do when they cheat is they gaslight. That's not true. I'm not doing that. And they will deny and deny and deny cheating until you have video proof. And then they'll say, oh my God, all right, enough. Yes, I did it. You just get so crazy that I didn't want to tell you the truth. So now they, who have deceived you and lied to you, are turning it around and saying, I simply couldn't tell you this because you are the one who's unhinged. Gaslighting on steroids. When a narcissist cheats, it feels invalidating, as all cheating does. But more than anything, it's to give them validation, narcissistic supply. It plays on their entitlement. And it's not unusual for narcissists to be serial cheaters. They will apologize. They will go to therapy. They'll cry their crocodile tears. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I messed up our family. Or they'll gaslight. It really wasn't that bad. She didn't mean anything. We were going through a rough patch. And you believe it. And you take them back in. Or maybe you don't believe it, but you don't want to blow up your family. So you accept it and you move forward. And you may even forgive it. And then they do it again. Those ongoing betrayals are like breaking a bone over and over again in the same place. So, what's the difference between that and being cheated on by somebody who's not a narcissist? If you read the work of famed psychotherapist Esther Perel, who's done some really, really interesting work writing about and speaking about infidelity in relationships, she takes the point of view that not all cheating is created the same way. And she actually highlights the fact that in some relationships, they actually use it as a wake-up call. They grow from it. Instead of it destroying them, they take some important lessons from it and pay it forward into their own relationship. She sees that cheating is sometimes a byproduct of excitement seeking in a relationship. It may reflect different temperaments in a relationship, but that reparation can be made. Because Esther Perel works with a different patient population than I do, I don't see that as much because I tend to work with people who are dealing with narcissistic cheaters. But her work is actually really quite compelling, and she makes the points really, really well. So then this takes us back to this point of these excitement-seeking sort of garden variety non-narcissistic cheaters. The non-narcissistic cheaters can actually be kind of nice people. They're people who may have actually started kind of the relationship, the marriage started losing its mojo, or the relationship started losing its mojo. There was more time maybe spent on kids or careers. The couple may have been traveling a lot. They were in different places. They got married very young. And one person wanders out of the relationship and they get caught in it, or they fess up to it. And meaningful conversations ensue. But one of the most meaningful conversations is often the authentic and genuine devastation that the cheater felt at how badly they hurt their partner through their dishonesty. It keeps them up at night. It destroys them. They recognize the hurt. They even recognize it while they were doing it, and will recognize that they got caught up in everything. It wasn't as much about narcissistic supply. It was about a different dynamic. But here's the key difference. And this is the key difference between being cheated on by a narcissist and being cheated on by a non-narcissist. The non-narcissistic individual will actually often implement the lesson, will apologize in a genuine and authentic way, will commit to never ever doing this again, and will do the hard work of breaching that rupture and fostering trust again in the relationship. It will be a meaningful, heartfelt gesture. I've seen it in clients I've worked with over the years. It is committed. The couple gets past the rupture. They recognize the period that it was, and they recognize it as any rough patch in a marriage. Same as they would maybe someone losing a job or having to move to a city they didn't want to go to, or nursing somebody through a major illness in the relationship. It was a blip. It was a moment. It's something they learn from. And if anything, that non-narcissistic cheater commits themselves head over heels into the relationship, recognizing the importance of things like mindfulness, being respectful, being aware, being open, and communicating openly about what both of them need in the relationship. It is a very different experience down the road. Listen, at the time the revelations come out, whether you're cheated on by a narcissist or a non-narcissist, it feels very similar. It feels like a betrayal. It feels like a breach of trust. It hurts terribly. You feel misunderstood, unheard, unseen, and most of all, sadly, what so many people believe is that they're not good enough when they're more than enough. It's your partner who did this. It's not a reflection of you. But as time goes on is really where you see the difference. If you've been cheated on by a narcissist, the narcissist wants everything to go back to the way it was. Come on, let's just pretend that didn't happen, or it wasn't that big a deal. Gaslighting, denial, all kinds of things that play with your reality. It did happen, and it did hurt. And as the person who was hurt in this, you do deserve that opportunity to talk about those feelings and feel like you're safe enough to talk about them. When we contrast that to being cheated on by a non-narcissist, it feels very, very different. The non-narcissist is willing to sit and hear your pain, is genuinely contrite and apologetic for what they did, would understand that there may be a very real consequence to their actions, and instead of denying it or minimizing it, will say, I messed up, I hurt you, and if you decide that you can't stay in this, I have to respect that decision. That feels very, very different that someone's like, it wasn't that big a deal, it was only one time, what's wrong with you, why do you keep making such a big deal out of this? That's a very, very different feeling. In the second scenario, in the second scenario, you may still feel like you can't get past this, and that's okay. Sometimes people can't, and that is okay. You can give yourself that permission. But sometimes people feel like they can, and learn from it, and move forward, and implement this life lesson into their relationship. That's very possible if you've been cheated on by someone who's not a narcissistic, invalidating person. Not so much when you're with a person who is a narcissistic cheater, because there's all kinds of other stuff that go with that, of being chronically invalidated and disrespected and devalued in so many other ways. The cheating just becomes part of a longer list. Whereas people who are cheated on by non-narcissists will say, you know, the relationship kind of felt like it was going on as usual, though he seemed like, or she seemed a little bit more distracted than usual. But because there was some other good connective tissue, perhaps around things like respect, which obviously has ruptured a little after that experience, but shared interests and that kind of thing, those things can sustain and again make the connective tissue that can help a relationship like this last. It's important to understand the difference, because what ends up happening is if you go online and you seek out guidance on infidelity and how I should be healing, a lot of that information is all smushed up. Narcissistic and non-narcissistic cheating, all those stories together. They're very different stories. Only you know if you're in a relationship with somebody who's narcissistic and that this is part of a larger pattern. You can definitely tell the difference. The denials, the gaslighting, the twisting the truth, all of that. That has a very different feel. The micro-cheating, the ongoing doing it not once but twice, but 3 times, but 4 times, feeling entitled to it, it feels very different. They'll be entitled in all areas of their life, not just in their infidelity. And it's all really, really uncomfortable. You know that that experience feels very invalidating all the way around, and that you've got a bigger problem than infidelity. That's one of many problems you have to deal with when you're in a relationship with a narcissist. Reflect on that difference. Again, infidelity in a long-term relationship can be really, really devastating. It can be even more devastating if you grew up in a family system where you saw it happen between your own parents. It can also bring up those old feelings of not feeling safe and of what it must have felt like for the other parent who was going through it and being cheated on, or, God forbid, feeling like you were the one who had to keep one of your parents' secrets. So there is a difference, and only you know, I mean, which story is yours, but to understand it feels different. And when you go online and get that cheating information, it's all smushed up, be aware that the kinds of stories, the kind of healing, and the kind of hurt looks and feels very different. And again, for all of you, I really hope that you do have a relationship that's characterized by trust, respect, and open communication. All of you deserve it, and hopefully at some point in your life, either you're already having it now because you've gotten out of a narcissistic relationship, or you find it in the future. That's my hope for all of you. Thanks. When someone says they will call you later, you expect that they will. Maybe a few times they may not follow up with the call, but perhaps for perfectly good reasons. They might say something like, I fell asleep, or I got distracted with work. How many times, though, does it need to happen before you recognize that they simply are kind of messing with you, that they probably aren't going to call you back? Future faking is often much more sinister than not calling you back later. It's actually a form of manipulation and of keeping you hooked in by making the kinds of future promises you want to hear. For example, This may include wanting to have a family with you someday. And perhaps they might say things about wanting to get married someday, and buy a house together someday, and travel the world together someday. It may be that they're going to support you in starting a business together someday. They set the tone for the life you want, for the life you envision, and for the things that you hope for. And they use future faking, though, for very different and much more manipulative purposes. Future fakers reassure you. They tell you about the income potential that they're going to have one day, or that they're making more than enough money to take care of both of you. In that way, future fakers can often coax a partner to leave a job or move to another place, even another country, just to be with the narcissist. And then they tell you they'll take care of everything financially and take care of you so you can pursue your dreams. If we know only one thing, it's that one of the main things that can often keep people stuck in narcissistic relationships is financial dependency. And once that narcissist renders you financially dependent on him or her, they are able to exert far more psychological control. And that's even going to be more pronounced if you move to a part of the country you're not from or to another country. The future faking idea that they will take care of everything financially can get you stuck into a prison. And this can happen in family situations too. When family members promise you more opportunities in the future, for example, if you join a family business, or they'll promise you money for something like a down payment for a house, or for tuition, or for a wedding. They promise all of that someday if you just continue to live near them and not move away for a new job, or something else that gives them ongoing control of you. Sometimes it may just be the debt. Now, one function of future faking is simply to distract you. Just when you may be having a growing sense of discontent about the relationship, or maybe even starting to express some unease, or even slowly drawing away, or maybe you just have your own dreams and aspirations that this relationship doesn't fall into, future faking is a perfect manipulation to draw you back in. They'll focus on talking about future things that really, really matter to you. And that doing this future faking, can make you doubt yourself and make you think twice about transitioning out of the relationship. You're like, am I leaving before they serve the cake? Because what they'll often do is they will often employ future faking at very strategic times to keep you hooked in to the relationship. Just when maybe a significant decision needs to be made about work or school, that's when they'll exert it. Now, future faking is often a way for them to get what they want now by making a promise to you that's down the road. One day when we have kids, one day when we buy a house, and so on and so forth. In that way, it's sort of like a psychological Ponzi scheme in which you buy in now and never get paid down the road. They ask you to make a sacrifice now. Make a compromise now. Give them money or support something else now. Because someday they will do whatever that thing you want is. Now, what they're astute at is really kind of figuring out what matters to you in the future and promising you exactly that thing. Now, it's not because they're magical, but it's often part of the mirroring process where they listen to you and they figure out what makes you tick, which gives them a perfect tool to future fake from. Future faking often does build off of that idea of mirroring, which is another video in the series. Now, narcissists devote a lot of time to mirroring and to getting the data about you. As a result, they do know what to future fake about because they've learned so much about you. So if you never mention kids or any interest in kids, they're not going to say, hey, one day we're going to have kids, because that's not going to be a good future fake that draws you in. It preys upon that most vulnerable part of you, your hope. And as we already know, hope is already what often gets people stuck in narcissistic relationships, because you think or you hope that things will get better, or you hope that things will change. But future faking is also something else that can harness your hope, leaving you convinced that if you just stick it out, you will get the thing you want, and that, oh my gosh, if I walk away from this now, it's just one more time of me self-sabotaging. Now, anybody who comes from a narcissistic family system knows that future faking is a standard part of the narcissistic family's operating manual. Whether it is day-to-day promises or spending time with you or catch, they will make those promises. Yeah, I'll play catch with you when I get home. Yeah, we'll definitely, we'll go to the park this weekend. Oh, absolutely, next week we'll go back to school shopping. Or they go into the bigger ticket promises, the bigger future faking, that perhaps someday they will support you and give you financial support for tuition or something like that, as long as you just help them right now. Many of you can recall how a narcissistic family member fleeced you. You helped them at exactly the time they needed, might have given up your time, even something you wanted to do. But you did it on the basis of not only being a nice person, but of some future promise. And that future never materialized. This can feel awful regardless of who the family member is, but it can feel particularly atrocious when it's your parent. A parent that's in essence dangling a carrot. They did it when you're a kid, they do it when you're an adult, but it turns into nothing. Future faking is also often a big part of working with a narcissist. You may, for example, work with an important mentor in your field, or a teacher, or a supervisor or boss who might promise you all kinds of opportunities, or a book you would write, or other advantages, or open doors for you. And you end up being nothing more than that person's glorified assistant and never, ever get any of the recognition, either publicly or even through other things like money. A boss may suck you in by promising you valuable options in the company down the line and sell you all kinds of grandiose lines about profit sharing and promotions. And then they demand you work tirelessly for less than you are worth now on the basis of those future promises. It can be pretty devastating to put the time in and never having it materialize. Future faking lies are particularly clever lies because they link into our hope for the future. It's not a lie in the present time because they're promising something down the future. It's a lot easier to call out a lie that's happening right in front of us. It's a little bit harder to call someone out on something that they're promising down the line. It may take months, years, or even decades to uncover a future fake, and by then, you may have lost a lot of life. You wait and you wait and you wait, and you take out the student loans, you think, oh, they're going to come bail me out on that tuition. Before you know it, you got $80,000 in student debt, and the money never comes. A personal example of mine actually comes from a job I once had. It was a tyrannical boss. It was a prestigious working situation. Long story short, she promised me all kinds of great things. She promised me great opportunities and a tremendous likelihood of advancement and pretty much my name in lights that I could work independently and I would be a hot shot in the field of psychology. I worked on a team and she worked us to the bone and pretty much kept us on lockdown. The norm in our kind of a job was that you could really work from home or work in a library or work anywhere you needed to get the job done, and it was really only measured on results. Most of us worked far more than the 8 hours that the job required, but she expected us locked down. We would have gotten so much more done if we weren't in the midst of all that chaos. But all the promises she was making didn't seem to be materializing. And I could see that the future indeed seemed fake, and I was quite young at the time. So I went on a secret job search, and I ended up leaving. Interestingly, 10 years later, I had the opportunity, I ran into someone who actually stayed in that job, holding out for the big, bright future that this tyrant was promising. What was so compelling to me was this woman, who's very lovely, told me she stayed for another 10 years. Not only had she not been advanced, not one thing that had been promised had been achieved. 10 years later. For me, it was a living lesson on future faking, that this particular tyrannical boss kept everyone in line with promises of a bright future, instead taking every opportunity for herself. And since it happened to be in a field in which things do happen slowly, in academic and scholarly fields, things do happen slowly, you wanted to believe it. You wanted to believe that someone who was a mentor would help you achieve your dreams. It was definitely a rude awakening and one heck of a compelling way to learn about future faking. Future faking represents a very cruel hybrid of manipulation, lying, and mirroring. For the narcissist, it is a way of buying time, a way of keeping you in without actually having to expend the effort of creating a meaningful future together, or a meaningful future that has opportunities for you, that work for you. They're going to be very quick to say, oh, if you only move to New York with me, I promise you, we'll move back to Chicago. Trust me, you better eat one last deep dish pizza because you aren't seeing Chicago. So why do narcissists future fake? Well, as always, it's a way for them to keep their steady source of validation and approval just nearby without having to do that much work. It's also a way of exerting their grandiosity, because so much of what they sort of future fake about is really quite grandiose. Oh, someday we're going to live in a house that big, and you'll drive by all the big houses in your town, or we're going to buy a retirement house on a lake, or we're going to move to Hawaii, or we're going to travel around the world, we're going to have 4 kids, and we're going to move to a place with wonderful schools, or we're one day going to make you the head of this company, or I'm going to one day take care of your family because of all they've done for us, or I'm going to make your creative dreams come true and support you while you pursue your dreams. From a probability standpoint, at the time the narcissist makes the promise, you can see how far away that hope is. But we're all just little kids who want to believe in the dream. We want to believe, much like every little child out there does, that one day our hope, our dream will come true. And when someone is sitting there and promising it to us, that we don't want to question the future faking. So the narcissist gets to use their grandiosity as a tool of manipulation. And narcissists do manipulate so you don't see how insecure they are or how really ineffectual they are. The fact is, they cannot make the things they promise happen in the moment. It's just not possible. You can't snap your fingers and make the big house come, or magically make 4 kids come into existence. But by promising they'll make it happen down the road, it allows them to soothe their insecurities about the fact that they're not really Superman or Superwoman, and keep you around. Remember, narcissists are actually quite fragile in the face of abandonment. Because abandonment does activate their insecurity, future faking, in a way, becomes a way to avoid that reality and avoid that abandonment threat, as well as a threat to their inner insecurity. So, what does future faking do to you? I can promise you it's not very good. It messes with your head because it actually harnesses your hopes and uses them against you. By mirroring you, the narcissist taps into what matters to you and then promises it to you. It's like falling prey to a very, very clever mind reader. It is really a particularly compelling form of manipulation because enough of us are realistic enough to recognize that not everything can happen right in this moment. So obviously, someone may very well promise you your dream or dream house and dream life one day, but we have to be realistic, and we have to be circumspect enough to recognize that it cannot happen right now. So in that way, we're being the realists. We then recognize that it's going to take time for these so-called promises, or to get the money, to build the family, all of those things that would make this so-called promised future happen. However, in doing that, we affix that dream to the narcissist. And now the narcissist's flaws, the narcissist's invalidation, and their emotional abuse can actually get overlooked because they are conflated or linked to that dream. You may very well stay in whatever kind of relationship you have with them, not because it feels good, not because it's healthy, but because you really do, because of the future faking, truly believe that it's the pathway to the future you want. I'm going to be honest with you, if I had a dime for every person who saw the red flags but stayed in the narcissistic relationship because the narcissist offered the dream, offered the things they wanted from life, which often ended up manifesting as more of a nightmare than a dream, I would be a very wealthy woman. Again, our dreams are almost used against us. Future faking, honestly, in my estimation, is one of the more cruel forms of narcissistic abuse because it plays on such a childlike, vulnerable part of all of us. Our dreams and our hopes and our wishes and frankly our fantasies for the future. And they don't have to be grandiose. It may be just a picket fence and a kid and a golden retriever. But ultimately, narcissists are the greatest illusionists and magicians and masters of disguise and deception. Future faking is a hell of a trick. Hocus pocus. I'm going to make you look over there. I'm going to take your dreams and wishes and promise them to you, and you will believe me, and then poof, they will never happen. You know, what is so hard about it is that we think it will happen. So, how do we best avoid future faking? One thing is, don't fully link your wishes and your aspirations to another person. Own that stuff. Pay attention to other examples in your life of the narcissist making more short-term promises that never come true. So for example, the original simple future faking example, when they don't return calls when they say they will, when they don't pick up the groceries they said they would on the way home, when they don't show up when they say they would pick you up and take you somewhere. Those small future fakes are usually the canaries in the proverbial coal mine that leave a trail that lead to the larger future fakes that can not only leave you feeling devastated, but can leave you to really fake a life and that actually lead you to waste the life and fill you with regret and make bigger mistakes. The smaller fakes always lead to larger ones. Honestly, the only way to truly avoid future faking is to put yourself in charge of your own dreams. And always keep in mind that so many people, after they go through an experience of future faking, they often blame themselves. They say, this is my fault. I wanted X, Y, and Z so badly that I got blinded by my own dreams. I got blinded by my own hopes. I got blinded by the things I wanted, and I wanted them so bad. And again, they may not be grandiose things, that I believed that moving to this other country, moving to this other place, giving up my career, leaving school early, supporting their education, and so on and so on and so forth, was going to be what was right for me. And I got so lost in that they'll get mad at them and say, I let this happen. I wouldn't be that hard on yourself. The fact of the matter is that even though it's incredibly important that you become the advocate for your own dreams, every one of us is vulnerable to the idea of wanting to share hopes and dreams and wanting to attach ourselves to people who share those hopes and dreams, hoping we can achieve them together. It feels like it's so much more of a joyous journey when we share it with someone, and it can be. Just make sure that you hitch your wagon to someone who's respectful, compassionate, kind, and sees through those day-to-day promises. It's a good sign that they may also follow up on the bigger ones. Thanks again, and I hope that makes sense of future faking to you. And please, as always, please hit the bell, subscribe to this channel, and then you'll get notifications as more content, more videos, and more YouTube Lives happen. Thanks again.